The day before my 38th birthday, I was diagnosed with a craniopharyngioma brain tumor, and I had brain surgery. This is part 5 of that story. And I'm not a medical professional. This is just how I remember things happening. Friday night was pretty rough, so I was pleasantly surprised when I woke up feeling pretty good on Saturday morning. The neurosurgeon came to visit me first thing. He said he'd be reviewing my case with the tumor board, and they'd be coming up with next steps and a treatment plan. They'd review the video of the surgery, and I was like, there's a video of my brains? Which fancy celebrity was going to play my brains in this video? And what kind of music was there going to be? He said it wasn't really that type of video, so I shouldn't get too excited about it. But I was pretty excited about it anyway and couldn't wait to see it. But then I asked him when they were going to make me go home. This was already the start of day 3, and I was worried they were going to kick me to the curb. But he said I'd be there for a couple more days, and I was more than happy to hear that that would be the case. Saturday was the day that the flowers started to arrive. I received so many beautiful flowers and cards and gifts. I felt very loved and supported. And I kept on with my physical therapy. 30 minutes, every once in a while, sitting in a chair, sometimes eating applesauce. I was getting really good at it, but mostly I just laid in bed looking at the wall. There was a TV in my room, but it was so loud, even with the volume turned way down, and it just hurt my brain way too much to even try to watch. So I just laid there, but I did like to have my door open just a little bit, because it allowed me to feel like I was in touch with the outside world. And a lot was going on out there. I had to ask the physician's assistant for help to decipher everything that was happening. For instance, code gray was constantly being called in the emergency room. I'm not sure why we needed to hear about it in the 5th floor of the East Tower, but it meant that somebody that was not of sound mind was trying to leave the hospital. There were also 2 distinct music alarms that were constantly going off, neither of which were going to be featured in the soundtrack for my surgical video. But the first was Mary Had a Little Lamb, which meant someone was trying to get out of bed when they shouldn't be. Christy asked me, how did I know that I didn't have that alarm on my bed? And I didn't know. Maybe I did, and maybe I was the one who was setting it off all the time. The other alarm was more like a chime. It went off when certain patients were having seizures. The floor had an epilepsy control room, and it was full of all kinds of computers and monitors. And epilepsy patients would come to the hospital for observation, trying to have a seizure while hooked up to everything, so that the doctors and nurses could try to pinpoint exactly where the seizure was coming from or what might be causing it. I was worried for those patients, but the nurse said they weren't necessarily in any pain. Not that having a seizure was pleasant, but she admired them for wanting to get better and for going through all that to try and figure it out. Every time that alarm went off, it was pretty scary though. The other common thing I heard was the elderly man in the room next door, swearing up a storm, all day long. He did not want to be there. I spent a lot of time thinking about the other patients and all of this activity, and I felt pretty fortunate for how well I was doing so soon after my own surgery. Sunday morning I woke up feeling even better than the day before. And when the neurosurgeon came to visit, he commented on how I looked so much better. Better than what? I'm not quite sure, but better nonetheless. I asked him again how they shrank my brain, and he said they put some medicine in there, and it dehydrated it, and it just shriveled all up. And then he said, well, not really shrivel. But each time I talked to the guy, I liked him more and more. He said it took about an hour to get my head put back together. And Christy visited me every day, and she and my mom took the kids on an exciting Seattle adventure. She tried to show me some pictures, but my brain just wouldn't work. It hurt too much to look at those tiny pictures. But I was happy to sit back and listen about all of the fun they had. Not too long after, someone came into my room and told me I had to have occupational therapy. I didn't realize I needed occupational therapy, but apparently they needed to make sure I was going to be able to take care of myself when I got home. And occupational therapy on this day meant taking a shower. And I told her that sounded like a terrible idea. But she said, no, it's a great idea. Well, it turns out that occupational therapy is pretty much like physical therapy, except for you're naked, and there's a lot less applesauce involved. So I sat on a little bench, and she helped me wash my hair. I washed my other bits, and not once did I fall down, which was the main concern of the whole occupational therapy experience. After I was all dried off and back in bed, I decided to call the kids. I hadn't talked to them since Wednesday night. My older kid seemed shy at first. My mom told me later how after that phone conversation, my kid had exclaimed how happy he was that I could talk. He wasn't sure what to expect, and just hearing my voice was so reassuring to him. Eric and I had already discussed that he would go home and spend Sunday night at the house. I was okay with that, and I thought it was a good idea for him. But when he started to leave, I got a little sad, a little lonely, and a little scared. But just then, some of my triathlon friends showed up. It was fun to catch up, and we laughed and laughed. Until someone came in and said I needed physical therapy. And I was like, wait a minute, I sat in a chair already today. Multiple times. But they explained I had to have some more advanced physical therapy. I needed to go up and down some stairs. I was pretty excited to show my friends how strong I was, and how I could stand up and walk, and how I was going to be a stair master. Until that physical therapist got me out into that stairwell. She tied a rope around my waist and pulled me up and down the stairs. Okay, not really. The rope was there to make sure I didn't fall. She didn't pull me anywhere. But it was still a little bit weird. The good news is, I didn't fall. When we got back to the room, she wrote the directives on my whiteboard, saying that my friends could tie the rope to me and drag me around if they wanted to as well. That was a lot of excitement for one day, so I was ready for bed that night. I was pretty excited when I woke up on Monday morning because I was going home, and I was feeling pretty ready to do so. I was done with having blood taken out all the time, and I was done having to tell somebody every time I peed. But it seemed like the only thing they really cared about was the number 2. And they kept asking about it, and I kept saying I didn't want to talk about it. But they needed to make sure that my digestive system didn't shut down from lack of activity over the past several days. And because if I went home and I had to strain, I might burst some brains right out of my head. And nobody wanted that to happen. So I reluctantly told them that it hadn't happened. The nurse said that was okay because they could give me some medicine to help move things along. And then she called in another nurse who was going to administer that medicine. I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but there was a lot of discussion between the nurses about, is it in there all the way? And then I apologized, and then one nurse said it was okay, and she just hoped it made me feel better. Spoiler alert, it didn't work. But she left and never came back, which leads me to believe that giving the medicine is her only job, or she quit, which I wouldn't blame her for, because I was pretty traumatized, and I'm still recovering from it 8 years later. But boy, how I was excited to talk about my pee after that. Moving on from that, I started to get dressed to go home. And gosh, I had no idea how much I missed wearing underpants. Eric and our younger kid came to pick me up. I was loaded into a wheelchair, just a normal one this time, and we went straight to the hospital pharmacy. There were medications to keep my brain from swelling. We got antacids, we got stool softeners, and laxatives, because no straining. There was a medication to reduce intracranial pressure, and then pain medicines and things to keep me from puking as well. Eric left to go get the car. And as we sat there waiting, my little boy reached out to grab my hand, which overwhelmed me with all kinds of love and excitement about being with my family again. Once in the car, the drive home seemed to take forever. There wasn't any traffic, but I was afraid of getting sick, of getting into an accident, and frankly, pretty afraid of going home. But once there, I went straight to bed and slept for a few hours, until my older kid got home from school. We were all together again, and the kids were all wound up, making a ton of noise. They were laughing and playing and running around all over the place. But even with the door shut, it was too much for my healing brain to handle. Even so, I was so happy to be home again, in my own bed. And the cats, oh my gosh, they didn't try to clean the incision, but they wouldn't leave me alone either. Apparently they missed me too. When it was time to go to bed that night, I was scared to have Eric in the bed with me. More than once, we've hit each other in the head or face while we slept, and I was worried he might accidentally bump me. But all I could do was go to sleep and hope for the best.